My biggest issue with the Silent Hill 2 remake is honestly an issue I have with most modern horror games. So while I'm talking about this and specifically referring to Silent Hill 2, know that it can be said about most horror games that have come out in the last 10 to 15 years. The issue is, where is the flavor text? In case you're not sure what I'm referring to, flavor text was the little blurb of internal dialogue on screen in which the characters you're playing say something. Most older horror games and RPGs had them in some way. The Silent Hill games have some especially expressive flavor text, particularly in 2, 3, and 4, where it really helps you learn a lot about James, Heather, and Henry through the words on screen. Flavor text was a way to give players perspective, confirmation, or insight on the environment or characters. Silent Hill 2, like many other horror games of this era, does not have any flavor text. I'm not really sure why it doesn't. This style of gameplay, which is much less actiony than a Resident Evil game, has plenty of opportunities for James to examine things. Here's a few examples of what I mean. I just put dialogue on top of things he could have examined, but didn't. At least not in a way that we can see. You may be wondering why it's an issue for me. Well, first of all, I wasn't lying when I titled this video. My biggest issue is dumb. I loved this game. I think they did an amazing job. It's just, I don't know, as I played the game, I found myself missing the little on-screen dialogue. James is, well, he's a little bit flat now. Because games these days are trying to emulate movies with the show-not-tell methods of expression, we miss out on getting to know him better through some of his internal dialogue. I think this James's distant attitude and actions make a lot more sense in relations to what he did prior to the game. But I don't think he's so aloof that he has literally zero thoughts. I miss when he describes what he's seeing or that he doesn't care much for football, or when he sees something that disturbs him in some way. I even miss confirmations on doors being unopenable. I find myself wondering how new players to the series are in any way able to relate to him like this. Us longtime fans already know what he's done and why he's there. We can give him a pass for the way he's acting, and through the original can infer his feelings on things, like football. For this version of him, I feel a second playthrough is required for new players to really understand him, and all you end up seeing is that he's not just a mentally broken widower, he's actually a mentally broken murderer. The original, on the other hand, made him seem like a normal, hopeless man who just wants to see his dead wife again. That's something the original's flavor text contributed to. It made James seem way more normal, much more relatable. He wasn't this distant, stoic guy who seemed a little off. He was walking into a situation that he understood just as much as we did. And discovering that darkness that lurked inside of him was part of the adventure, part of the shock. Reading his concern for Maria being sick or his surprise at there being a dead body in the fridge helped make him out to be an actual everyman, and it made him feel much less like an emotionless body for us to explore the world with. Not that I feel this James was emotionless, I just found it harder to connect with him. I understand why choices like this were made. The goal was to be more immersive. But I think the lack of flavor text hurt the character development, the world building, and yes, the immersion. The game did right by letting us, the player, be the ones who react to things in-game, muting James and making us the only ones who could fumble his movements and reactions. But in my opinion, that's where it should have stopped. This is still James's story. If the game really wanted us to feel like we were stepping into James's shoes, I think the ability to examine things and interact with the environment would have made it feel less like we're being guided and more like we're exploring the world, both with James and as him. Sometimes it's nice to get to know a character through their thoughts, or maybe they know a bit of background on the area, and other times it's just helpful being told that we can't go that way. In addition to that, there were a few times that the lack of flavor text brought me out of things a bit. There were a few instances that could have been much more impactful had you been able to at least see what James was thinking. One example is this scene where we find this dead James watching TV. James walks up to him, realizes the guy's been killed, and then backs away. It feels weird that James has nothing to say about this at all. He's likely quite freaked out, like in the original. But instead, we get nothing. Which, to me, kinda makes James feel less like his own character, and more like our avatar into the world, removing a bit of his own agency, and in some way reducing his role in his own story. I know that immersion was the goal, but this is still a story game. I wanted his acting to be more muted, but not his thoughts. I feel like I know this James a lot less than the original. The flavor text just gave us more ways to fill in the gaps of James's characterization. I don't know, guys. I'm trying not to overthink this, though it may be a bit too late for that. Again, this is my biggest issue, an absolutely minuscule complaint. Some of you may hear my thoughts on this and think, this doesn't matter at all. And that may not be wrong. But maybe a couple of you will say, you know, it could have been kind of cool to read some of James's thoughts, like in the original. That being said, this is not a deal breaker for me. I love that James isn't very talkative in-game, but I loved reading internal dialogues. I loved finding and examining things in older horror games. I loved getting to know the characters through little insights. It helped give me a reason to walk around and explore, to examine things and to be thorough in my search. And I find myself missing it from not only this game, but from many horror games. There are traits of older games that, for whatever reason, have started to go away over time. But there are some that I wish wouldn't, like flavor text. Anyway, I may be the only person who noticed this and cared in any way, but I thought it added a little bit extra to awesome games, and it could have been cool to see it brought to 2024. Maybe somebody will mod it in someday, but damn, that'd be a lot of text. Thanks for watching.